cliches, actually take the time to think what that means. It's the essence of human experience boiled down to one sentence.
Mm-hmm.
It's a way of passing on tons of knowledge to someone else in a condensed form that's easy to digest. And so much of life is just understanding that point. When your dad tells you something to get up in the morning and do it, or idle hands are the devil's workshop, or want of money is the root of all evil. Those all have a purpose that is this condensed experience of humans that you really learn from.
Yeah, interesting point. Okay, so here you are following this coach's advice. You're showing up for practice. Where did it go from there? You start playing and it start getting good? I mean, what happened?
Can we talk about showing up into your first meeting where you don't speak the language they're speaking?
Yeah, right.
I was blindsided. I get in there, and we all think we know a sport. We know, you can go into the stands. Half the guys in the stands know more than the coaches, right? That's just the way it is. And I'm thinking, okay, I know. We're going to pass pro. We're going to run block. This will be good. I got those. And I get in there, and there's this language being spoke that I don't understand. I'm like, okay, line of scrimmage, I got that. Okay, but in a football room, it's just LOS. What's the LOS? They don't say, what is the line of scrimmage? Okay, LOS is here. And then you got the front side, and you got the back side, and you got the field side, and you got the boundary side, you got the split, you got your depth. Okay, what's our cadence? What's our tempo? Tempo's difference, right? Okay. And then you start getting to, okay, what's your rule, right? Hey, do we have a hot? Do we have an audible? We have an eat, we have a tag. And then you start, and they're doing this. I'm like, wait a minute. And they're saying on film, they're watching. I'm like, I'm just trying to watch the film and I'm listening, and there's a disconnect. I have no idea what's going on. And admitting that and going, oh, okay, there's a lot to this sport I had no idea of. And then they're watching the film and they're saying things like, hey, now Mike is this guy. And I'm like, that's Odell. That's not Mike. Oh, okay. Learning that every position has a name.
Okay.
And we have to identify who those guys are.
Right.
And that was day one. And that afternoon, I had to go in and put on pads, and I didn't know how to put on pads. I sat there and I watching the guys, and I put my girdle on, and it's got hip pads and it's got a long pad, and I thought, hey, that's got to go in front.
You hope it does.
I know. I'm like, and that's when you learn nobody wears a cup in football. You can't run with a cup on, and it goes in back. It's a tail pad, and then you run your first day of practice where you got knocked on my butt 15 times. No, I'm really glad I had that tail pad.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, now I get this pad. So learning, having to put myself through that, and then day after day, and having a coach who understood I knew nothing and had no expectations for me, yet gave me the time of day just like every other player. I was able to, I excelled. I just took those lessons. I listened to everything he said. I didn't have any bad habits, and I didn't think I knew anything about the game because I didn't. I learned that first meeting. So I could just be a blank slate. And for the rest of my life, when I start something new, even if I know a little bit about it, I don't know anything about it. I just don't know a thing. Or else I'll have that in my head while I'm trying to learn it. I just want to learn it. And that's what ended up happening. And this coach took his time with me, and I ended up being very heavily recruited. And I decided to go to Arizona, which surprised a lot of people. They all thought I'd go to USC. That was my dream school. It's kind of my professed goal when I said I want to play football. Or at least when I got good enough to get recruited. And Arizona was the right place. It was the family, the coaches, everything about it felt right. And I think it proved out over time that it was the right decision.
Which, by the way, for the listeners, if you're from Orange County and you didn't go to USC, it's like you're out of the club almost. You drive through Huntington and Newport, almost every house has an SC flag on it for whatever reason.
And my mom's sole side of the family all went to USC. There was a lot of anger when I chose Arizona.
Well, good for you on that. One thing you said a minute ago that I just like reflecting back on, because I've got all your career stats in front of me and the success, but the fact that when you showed up for the first time, you didn't know and you weren't afraid to ask and try to understand. I think so often we're intimidated by, well, I just don't know that. How can I succeed in that if I don't know how to do it or if I'm not willing to learn? And here you are, when you look back at your career, it was very successful. And you started out knowing nothing.
Knowing nothing. And think, though, somewhere along the line, we as humans lose the ability to admit we know nothing. As a kid, we constantly ask, why? We try something over and over till we get it right. Why? But somewhere along there, we worry more about what other people think. They might think I'm stupid. They might think I can't do this. And we lose that innocence where we make all of our biggest gains are those first 4 or 5 years of our life. And after that, we lose that. And if you'll just approach it to the, I don't know anything, it's amazing what can be done. I have constantly learned and started new things. And my wife laughs at me because here we were in COVID. I was doing all this. I still had time. I happened to see a buddy and say, hey, you know what? I just saw his pizza oven. I go, that is so cool. Even though my buddy made it, I said, man, I wish I could weld. And his friend happened to be sitting there, said, I can teach you. Well, now I've learned to weld, and I've built myself a pull-up bar with dip bars on it and everything else. I know how to weld now. I've got a little welder he loaned me. So, I didn't think I knew anything about welding because I didn't have a clue. So it's amazing what you can learn by being a blank slate instead of worrying about the thought process of I already know that, or I don't know that, or what are they going to think? And that allowed me, like you said, go in there and just to ask.
Yeah.
Because all great stories, they all have the same thing. There's something you have to get done, and somewhere along the line, a mentor helps the hero get it done. And I'm no hero, but I look for mentors every day. I look for people who can tell me what's going on.
Yeah, as we all should. Talk a little bit about how your career progressed from Arizona and on into the professional world.
So, after starting 7 games at Golden West, I get to Arizona, and I immediately went into the starting lineup, and I played 2 years, got drafted in the 3rd round. I went to Buffalo, a very veteran-heavy team, and was able to kind of get into the starting rotation early on, and enjoyed it, but I was always kind of the youngest guy. And as the NFL is an odd duck, fans look at it and say, hey, you were on this team. What was that team like? Well, every year is a different team. And the average flop on a team is 50% of the guys in a team picture taken in September won't be there in December. Mm-hmm. So you have friends on the team. There are the coaches and the owners and personnel, but it's not like it is in college or high school. And you'll always hear pro guys talk about that, is that it's just not the same because it's not a team in the team sense. It just because it's a business and you come in and out. So really it was all about, I got to keep my job. And every year I got to remake this team and keep my job. And of course I started, so that helps. And you get your contract situation. Became a much better football player later in my career though than I was early. Mm-hmm. And the reason is something I talk about all the time is that people are good at things. I was good at football. I didn't have a passion for football. My passion lay elsewhere. I was passionate about history. I'm passionate about some other things that I do, cooking and wine. Too many people have a passion and think that's what they should do is follow their passion. You might not be any good at what you have a passion for. But if you find out what you're good at and develop a passion, you can be incredible. Mm-hmm. And that's what happened about my 5th year in the league. I realized I had a passion for this game that I didn't know I had. And then I became a much better football player. I went to Kansas City. After my 7th year, I became the MVP there. After my 3rd year, I moved on to the Giants, where we made another Super Bowl. I was brought in to be kind of a catalyst for change in that locker room. And I think I accomplished that, but also, winning more awards along the way. And that career, it progressed from I'm here and I'm happy to I'm good at what I do to, oh my God, I love what I do and I don't want this to end. Yeah. And that's how I managed to stick through for 12 years.
So I got to digress for a second. You talked about being the late Colonel DePop. The last statement you said you were 5'6". So how much did you pop when you got into professional football?
What's interesting is I went from 5'6" as a freshman, 5'8" as a sophomore, 6'2" as a junior. I was 6'5" as a senior, 6'6" or more when I started playing football.
Wow.
And I went from a natural 250-pounder, 280-pounder when I got to junior college to and it took a while for this to happen because I was never a big lifter. I was never a guy that just loved that weight room. And genetically what happened is somewhere in that area, all of a sudden my body just threw weight on. If I lifted, I got heavy. Mm-hmm. I got big. I got muscle on my frame. I'm a naturally strong guy anyways in sports strength, athletic strength, but not necessarily weight room strength. But then it went from there up about year 5 or 6 that took off.
Wow, interesting. My brother did the same thing. going into high school. I remember carrying him down the street because he was so little, right, and light. Now he can carry me with one hand, at 170 pounds. He's such a monster now. So you talked about going into the team locker or into the one team as being a catalyst for change. And you also discussed how the team itself rotates so often. How do you become a catalyst for change when there's regular turnover and set kind of those thoughts in motion with everybody?
So it starts with the character of the team and what you are. What's your soul? Mm-hmm. Teams have a soul to them, and what is it that drives them? What is it that does it? And so I was brought in. They said, "Listen, defense is dominating. Our offense won't stand up to them. We think we've got some talent. We really need something to happen." And so one of the things I learned early on from my head coach at junior college was, it's the old thing: if you don't care who wins, there's enough glory to go around. And offensive linemen live that life. We're service leadership. We don't care about accolades. It's just not on our. We just want to win ball games and get wins. And we, by nature, help people. We want offensive linemen. We want our running back to run. We want our quarterback to stay safe. Those are the things we do. So as I got there, I had to look and say, what was missing from this team after the offseason that I know we had in those other teams. And there was that soul, that kind of esprit de corps of who we were. It was very divided on offense, defense lines. So myself and another veteran who had been brought in, we just started saying, okay, let's start with what we can start with, and that's this offensive line. And it would be as simple as when we were all out in our own position groups stretching prior to practice and the whistle blows, it's a dead sprint to the ball. And honestly, for the first 4 days, I was the only one that dead sprinted to the ball to touch the ball. And, you're talking 60 yards, and here's the big fat old guy running down there, and I'm screaming at him. Well, then it becomes someone else on defense or something sees it and decides, well, can't let this guy always beat us. Because I'm telling him straight up, can't let me beat you. Soon enough, the entire offensive line and D-line are sprinting to that ball, and it just snowballs. It sounds so stupid, but it's how to change that soul of a team from a me and an us to a we. And when we did that, when we were able to get that going, then it's as simple as starting a meeting after practice for the offensive line. And they had never done this. They had never had a film session, just the players. So we said, no, offensive line altogether, rookies, it's a Friday, you order some pizza, get some beer. Well, soon you have other players wanting in. We're like, no, this is offensive linemen only. And then you let them sit out there for a little bit, and then you get them in. And soon enough, we had the entire offense and some defensive players in that meeting watching those films. It's building that thing that makes a team that you can do outside of all the turnover. Because whoever comes in wants to be a part of it immediately. Yeah. Likes that. That's cool. And that's kind of what I did and how my teammates and I got that put together for a magical run to the Super Bowl that we unfortunately lost.
Yeah, I think we learn in life, sometimes it's those small, simple little things that really make the difference and change. And it's another one of those things that we just dismiss many, many times throughout our lives and forget it. It could be just the smallest thing that'll make a difference, not only in your own life, but maybe everybody else's life around you. That little bit of camaraderie that you can build up out of something.
The camaraderie, and when you say little things, was it Cleary who writes in Atomic Habits about, an ice cube it's a frozen ice cube. It's 32 degrees. Well, it can warm from 0 degrees to 32 degrees, and there's no change in that ice cube. Mm-hmm. But it left one more degree, and it's not an ice cube anymore. And it's little things, right? It's little tiny things that sometimes we dismiss that are really the thing in our life that can vault us to the next level.
Yeah. So you played for 12 seasons in the NFL and a lot of awards and accolades to go with that.
Yeah. My best year was my 13th because I got paid and I didn't play. So I didn't have any holding calls. I got to sit on my couch and watch the games. But 12 years, long career. But by no means what I always people know me as a football player, and that's never been my goal or my dream. Yeah. I always kept friends outside of football, not football players as friends. The game can end at any minute, and it's truly about who you keep around you that I think makes all the difference.
It's interesting because our careers don't always define us. I worked for In-N-Out Burger for 12 years. Great company, my brother had been there 30,